I suggest that we then move on, if you like, if you are still have power for following more information or for consuming more information about LIDO. We will have a quick insight to the new terminology, and I come back to my previous, to my slide from version 1.0. We have introduced this already 4 years ago. The first recommendations accompanying or supplementing the LIDO schema, and we have now pushed that further. And for the new version, quite a lot of more LIDO terminology is available, of course, also for version 1.0, where the elements exist already. You can go here to the web interface. You find this on the CIDOC website. And I would now just like to point you to the several elements and type attributes for which we have terminology available. That is the actor type attribute. That is the event type, still in progress, because this is really tough to to develop a stable and well defined type vocabulary. But this will also going on. This will go on, of course. We have several additional elements more on the administrative level. But what we have, and this is huge work done by Angela Kailos here in the group, together with others, but it's really Angela who has worked a lot on the related work relationship type terminology, and I therefore would like to hand over to Angela to tell us a bit about this. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I will do that. So first of all, let me explain why we put the emphasis on the related work rel type vocabulary of all elements that are still worth working on. So this, as you perhaps already know, this is a qualifier for a relationship between objects. So relationships between objects are very frequently documented in collections, and they are very interesting to research. But at the moment, there is no recognized standard vocabulary for describing these relationships, or it's not applied so far. So people do quite a lot of documenting there, but they're doing it just their style and very incongruently. Everybody does it, and you cannot use it for a qualified retrieval here. So now the occasion was that we were developing an application profile for prints and drawings, which was published in 2019 as the LIDO handbook for prints and drawings. I will post the link to that later on in the chat. And here for prints and drawings, relationships are just a prevailing topic. You can imagine that prints, here you come across copies that represent different or same states of the same printed work, or which are duplicates in the collection. Or prints are frequently reproductions of other works, of paintings or other prints. Or if you look to drawings, they very frequently are preparatory works in the production process, so they are in relation to other final objects, for instance, paintings or buildings or sculptures or anything. So, and why did we think it was so necessary to provide a vocabulary? Terms here can be a basis for filtering in retrieval and for an enhancing of recall and precision in the retrieval. So if you make it possible to have a qualified connection between all objects involved in the production process of a certain object, this would be a fine thing, even if it goes across databases. And if you perhaps you also want to link up objects which were derived from a certain object, if you're looking to copies and other variations that come after a final object already existed. So these terms have not been predefined in any other LOT vocabulary. And if we thought, if we were offering a vocabulary, we would support catalogers to qualify and make explicit the relationship between works, and to do so in a standardized way, which would be fit for LOT applications. So the characteristics of the related rel type vocabulary do take into account the WEMI data model, which you of work stages, which you perhaps know from the library context, which models works according to the stages work, expression, manifestation, and item. This applies to all works which are issued as multiples and produce identical copies in their production process. And so accordingly, we also had to be able in the vocabulary to relate to the conceptual and non-physical levels of a work. The basis for modeling here was the Ferber 00, which integrates the CRM and Ferber, or respectively the library reference model, which works with these models. So the result now are about 100 terms which were coined for the related work relationship type vocabulary, and they do not only cover prints and drawings, but also many relationships between other human-made objects of art and culture, and also architecture. So they also, these terms are based on the above mentioned standards, and they also involve strongly Getty's KONA editorial guidelines and the AAT. And of course, in the course of the work, major portal databases and other data sets were analyzed for the use of related work terms and the coverage of classes of objects which they were applied to. While still it's a work in progress, as some object classes may still need additional and more special relationship terms. So what do you find now in X3, which is the basis for the Sparkle publication of the terminology? This is what you see in the screenshot here. So you see that approximately 100 terms are grouped into a hierarchical structure. So first of all, you have the differentiation between hierarchical and associative relationships. The hierarchical relationships are, here you find instance relationships and partitive relationships. An instance relationship is something like where you have a specific copy of a print that exemplifies the print as a work described in the catalogue raisonné, which is the conceptual level. The partitive relationships say, well, there you simply, you know all that, you know it, there's a larger unit that has parts, or objects are part of a larger whole. This can also apply to a conceptual or a physical level, depending on what you need. So next slide, please. Regine? Thank you. So, well, and for every concept, we you see that where it has been integrated into a hierarchy of more general or more specific concepts which have to be applied to your documentation context. most relationship concepts are paired into inverse couples so that they can be used from the perspective of each object in the relation. So you can always go to every side of the relation and say, I am a part of this larger whole, or the larger, if you're looking from the larger whole, you can say, I have parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, and this applies to most of the terms. Not all of them, because something like I am a duplicate of is of course the same term for both sides. Then you see that a definition is provided so that you can see what in the context of the terminology is meant with the term. And the scope notes explain the use of the term and refer to other related terms in the section of the LIDO vocabulary. So if you're not sure if the term you want to apply is the correct one, you can also look to other terms which perhaps cover a similar concept. So next slide, please. So, but the much larger part is the associative relationships. This is a much larger set of possible relationships which are derived from the history of the objects, or which also cover the functional relationships, as in two major groups, which are the derivative relationships, or the relationships between stages of production. So if you want to make yourself familiar with this, just check it out over the LIDO website, and you can just browse to the categories and make yourself acquainted with what we have done here. And we will do more once other object classes will get into focus. Thank you. So are there any questions? Oh, I see there are some questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and actually I can go to the website. One question I just see here from Marta: do you have slides for sharing for this part? You mean for sharing the terminology part? Just please specify a bit more. Okay. And I will just go back to start the terminology, so you can see the full range here of associative relationships that Angela was talking about. Yeah. And Frank posted the links also to the chat. Thank you.
There's one more question. Are there different use cases for symbolic and numeric URI from the LIDO terminology?
Good question. Are there different use cases? No. We had a quite lengthy discussion if we should introduce symbolic URIs or not at the time when we started the terminology. It was concluded that symbolic URIs really help people cataloging as well as developers to work with this terminology, because it is in most cases a refinement of the data model. And as we know that though we would wish it otherwise, not many systems are ready to exploit a URI and feedback the label, which would of course usually be the the priority solution. So we decided to mint these symbolic URIs, and yeah, the answer to the question is no. There are not different use cases. We have, of course, now 2 URIs for one and the same concept, which is a shortcoming on the other side.